Let's talk rubbish, shall we? Because 300 tonnes of it is dumped in the Thames and must be cleared each year. Campaigners say forcing litter into London's overflowing bins isn't good for the environment, as so much of it ends up in the river. The Tidy Litterers campaign says the excess waste can be devastating for marine life. Gavin Ellis is co-founder of environmental charity Hubbub. It's behind the campaign. Joins me now. Gavin, good morning.
Good morning.
A tidy litterer, what is that?
So it's a term for, I suppose, people, as you just mentioned, who perhaps don't consider themselves to be everyday litterers, wouldn't flagrantly drop something, but perhaps would happily stuff something into an overflowing bin, or perhaps put it on a ledge so it's not on the floor. So then it's not it's not considered to be litter. Or down the classic is sort of things down grates and drains, so cigarette butts and that kind of thing going down the drain, so out of sight, out of mind. But obviously it does have an impact, and it does end up somewhere, quite often the River Thames. How
many people do we think are doing this tidy littering?
So we did some research recently, and 43% of Londoners, and there's 1,000 Londoners that we surveyed, said that they drop litter when they can't see a bin nearby, or they place litter next to full bins. And what happens then is obviously, it's actually in the bin, particularly around the river. You get quite a lot of wind, and it gets very easily just blown into the river. And as you mentioned, it's 300 tonnes of litter are cleared from the river each year. That's not to mention what sinks to the bottom, or what gets swept out to sea.
Well, if it does get swept out to sea, it's kind of out of sight, out of mind, isn't it? I mean, does it have a real impact, this amount of rubbish in the Thames?
Well, it does. I mean, firstly, going out to sea, there's been a lot recently in the news about the pollution of the oceans, and obviously it's all connected. The rivers are connected to the seas, connected to the oceans, so that has a big impact. Then the other issue is around the wildlife in the River Thames. So a lot of people, and in fact we did some polling on this as well, 7 out of 10 Londoners think that the Thames is too polluted to have anything living in it. Actually, that was the case about 50 or 60 years ago. Now there's over 120 species of fish living in the River Thames. So obviously all of that litter and pollution going in there is really bad for the fish. So there was a recent study a couple of years ago by the Royal Holloway University which showed that around 70% of fish in the river have plastic fibres in their guts. And there's a real danger that starts getting into the food chain, further out in the Thames estuary. There is commercial fishing going on, so there's a real issue with that starting to get into the food chain.
Sounds like not enough bins being emptied on time. Shouldn't you be lobbying councils rather than the public?
Well, obviously councils are under a lot of financial pressures at the moment. I think that's well known. Actually, we did a count along the south bank between Waterloo Bridge and Tower Bridge. There's a bin every 40 metres. So actually, there are a lot of bins there. I think it's back to that, the statistic of 43% of Londoners admitted in our poll that they'll drop litter if they can't see a bin nearby. So it's really just a case of trying to educate people, change their behaviour so that they'll just hold on to that litter for a little bit longer until they see a bin that's not overflowing, that's got some space in it, and use that bin instead.
And that's the lesson, is it? What you want people to do or not do is not stand it up on a wall, but just walk around with it a bit longer?
Exactly, yeah. Say with a coffee cup, if people are happy to walk with it full of coffee, and once it's empty, there's no harm in just carrying it a little bit further until you find a bin, or until you get to your office or whatever. So the message is really simple. Yeah, it's use the bin and think about the potential impact of litter, even if it's on land. In London with the big river running through it, potentially has a really big impact on the river and the wildlife in it. So it's that's the really simple call to action. This over the next 4 or 5 months along the South Bank around St Catherine's Dock, we'll be doing lots of communications, interventions, different activities to in a playful way, just to get people involved, raise awareness, and try and change their behaviour around it.
You see, we've been told for many years we should take our litter home, and in a sense that's what you're saying, but that doesn't really reflect the way Londoners live their lives, because you come out of work and then you go out, and you probably don't go home in between, and can't really go to wherever you may be going next carrying a load of litter because all the bins are full.
It's not necessarily saying take it home, and as I said, along the South Bank, there's a bin every 40 metres. So there are, I guess the point here is that there are plenty of bins around. Just because there isn't one immediately within your site doesn't mean there isn't one close by. So really that's the message. It's not necessarily stuff it in your bag and take it home. It's just, wait until you see one that's got some capacity in it.
Thanks, Gavin. Gavin Ellis, co-founder of the environmental charity Hubbub, behind this Tidy Litterer campaign for fish's sake.